Alex, thanks so much for agreeing to come on the show. We're going to start with some quick fire questions, if that's okay.
Surprise. Go
Throw
for it.
you right in there. Okay. Is being over 40 a reason to avoid heavy lifting?
No,
Does a busy job make it impossible to stay fit?
no, not at all. Workouts can be done in as short as 10 minutes, and you can still stay on top of your physical health, and most importantly, stay on top of your mental health as well.
So if you're in your 50s, can you be stronger than you were in your 20s?
If you were only playing with your training when you were in your 20s, then yes, you can be in your 50s. There's a guy that I trained, and he became a record-holding powerlifting champion at the age of, what was he, 74? So he definitely was stronger in his 50s, in his 60s, and even in his 70s than he was in his 20s.
Can you outtrain a bad diet?
Do you know what? This is an interesting one, right? Because I think everyone says no. Again, define bad diet. Now, if you want to run a marathon every day with a 40-kilo rucksack on, you probably can outtrain a bad diet. But then also on the other end, you're probably not going to have time to eat a load of crap because you're running all day. But I think, yeah, really for Joe Bloggs that's living a typical kind of normal life, you're going to find it pretty tough to outtrain a bad diet.
And then the last one is a dad bod inevitable after 40?
Inevitable. I think it's inevitable if you choose to allow the dad bod to creep in.
So obviously we've met or spoken before, and I think our sort of target audience is basically the same.
Mm.
How we approach these groups of men are slightly different, and you're coming more from the physical and fitness side, and mine's more from the medical health side, but the crossover is immense. But what I was going to start by getting you to talk about was some of the misconceptions you think you see with men over the age of 40 about their health or their wellness.
What is that typical phrase that we use to describe someone as soon as they have their 40th birthday? It's over the hill, right? And I think that goes back, blimey, I mean, I was hearing people say that when I was in single digits. It's just a common thing. I think people just think that that's what happens. And that in itself is a misconception. I think, when we look back at health clubs and gyms, and we look back into, the 70s and 80s, almost gyms and health clubs were for fit people, right? It was almost strange to see someone that was actually working on getting to a standard of fitness. And that also is no longer true. People are going to the gym because they want to improve on themselves.
Medically, and we'll come into this sort of midlife, or where we refer to as midlife, but 40 plus for us now. From a medical perspective, just looking at testosterone, naturally it peaks in your 20s. You keep enough of it going to your 30, and then no matter how fit you are, you're going to decrease by about 1% production per year. And you can't stop that. So even if you are going to the gym and eating really well, then this is going to be a slow decline in some capacity. So then the question comes back, how easy is it to build muscle after 40? We'll get back to Alex in one sec. Man Alive is a new show, and we have a huge amount of great celebrities and experts coming on to share with us both personal experiences and expert advice around men's health, as well as diving into real blood tests of guests. Please press subscribe to ensure you don't miss any of them. And now, back to Alex.
If you've never lifted a weight in your life, and you've never been at any kind of genetic maximum of muscle mass that you've got, and you start all of a sudden, lifting weights, and you start addressing the nutritional requirements to be able to build muscle, it can be relatively easy, because you've never been there before. However, if you're someone that's been, training with weights and pretty accurate with your diet in terms of eating the things that are going to help you to build muscle, sure, it's going to be harder to build muscle on top of a muscular frame that you've already built. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? So I think, again, it's in context, but again, I take you back to a question that we spoke about previously, which was the guy that I worked with that was in his mid-70s. Well, obviously, he still built an incredible amount of muscle. We've got clients coming to us all the time that are, the average age of client, I suppose, that I work with is probably about 55. And they're just absolutely shocked that, they're realizing that their bathroom time is 20 minutes longer, and it's all because they're hitting bicep shots in the mirror, So yeah, the muscle gain is absolutely still on the cards.
But supposing you've got a sedentary job, I don't know, you're a writer, you've got 8 hours a day sitting at a screen, what's the first step? They do nothing now. What's the first step they need to do to think, right, I need to do something about my health?
We are not short of information, right? With AI, with Google, with Karen over the fence, there's so much information there. My advice would be for someone before they even consider, well, not before they already consider, but obviously join a gym, get some stuff at home, whatever, right? But to actually get very clear on what they want to achieve. Because I think, again, with these misconceptions, it's, oh, well, because such and such an actor or such and such a celebrity has achieved this, surely I should be achieving that as well, because I only work 8 hours a day at a desk, and this is what we say in our head. So I think we need to just make a list of all the things that we actually want to achieve and get clear on why we want to achieve them and what benefit that is going to have on us and what benefit that's going to have on others. Too many people join a gym in the name of vanity, right? And if it's just on vanity, I'm going on holiday, I want to look a bit nicer in my budgie smugglers, that vanity in itself won't last. You must have a real must. And by getting it out of your head and getting really clear on what you want to achieve, why you want to achieve it, when you want to achieve it, then the pathway becomes really, really clear. Because in your head right now, you're probably thinking, well, if I'm going to look like the X celebrity or get out of how I'm feeling right now and get myself to a much nicer place, I probably need to take massive drastic action, which isn't realistic and sustainable for someone with probably 3 kids at home, a partner, a job, commuting time, all the rest of it. So the approach needs to be something that is realistic, it is sustainable, and it's also attacking the things that you actually want to see a change within.
Like, do you mean like physical shape?
Yeah. So yeah, but again, it's looking, if you want to achieve a different physical appearance, why? What would be the reason? Maybe it would be because I want to look better. So my next question would be, why do you want to look better? Because I want to have more confidence. Why do you want to have more confidence? Because I want to turn up for my kids better. Why do you want to turn up for your kids more? Because actually I didn't have a great relationship with my dad. And you see, no, that's not me, but just, and all of a sudden when you ask what I call the 7 whys, you no longer have this vanity thing that's superficial that will last until the wind changes or until your holiday's over. You've now got a proper passionate reason to keep you going through this process and not having to rely on things like motivation, because motivation comes and goes like the wind, doesn't it? So when we can link the physical change that you want with an actual benefit in your life, now it's glued, now it stays.
What's the oldest age you see of client? You refer to them as clients.
I refer to them as clients.
Sorry.
I think you refer to them as patients, only in your game.
Yeah.
The oldest that I've worked with is probably in early to mid 80s in men. That isn't, like I said earlier, my average age of client is probably around about 55, 56. But we still have loads of times, it still puts a smile on my face that there are still guys that comment on my social media posts that are, hey, I'm 76 and I'm following your advice and I've achieved X, Y, Z. I just think it's absolutely fantastic that there's so many. And that when I say so many, I mean, I see maybe 8 to 12 comments like that on a daily basis across all the different platforms where guys of that age are really forthcoming in trying to make a change at that age. I just think that's absolutely, that's just awesome, isn't it? Yeah.
I think that's very different from a cultural perspective. We didn't really see that 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. Men of older age actively trying to get fitter. There was a kind of acceptance that once you hit a certain age, well, that's my bit done now. I'm finished. I'll
Had a good innings.
Yeah, exactly that. One of the biggest drivers of sort of NHS concern in the next 20 years is frailty. The idea that we lose muscle mass, we lose bone density, cognitive function, that increases your falls risk or your ability to stay independent. So what we're doing in our 50s and 40s almost prevents or reduces that risk later on in life. So if you're seeing men now in their 70s thinking like that, that's a whole shift in the way that surely we're thinking as blokes. What's your opinion of longevity? What does it mean to you?
What it means to me, living as long as possible with as good quality as possible. For me, independence is quite a big thing. You know, I recently had some surgery on my stomach, and I'm quite an independent person. You know, I really don't like people pandering to me. You know, that there and any other kind of hospital trips I've had over the years has made me realise that I don't want to be that person that makes all those noises getting up and down out of a chair. That is needing help before my time, you know? So
Right.
for me, it's length of life, longevity for me. You know, I'm lucky I've got a, a young family, and as much as it sounds a bit cliche, I'd like to be around for her wedding, you know? I'd like to be around for her to have, children, and maybe even for them to have children. That means a lot to me, you know? And leave them behind some kind of legacy, you know, for my family, once I'm gone, feel like a memory. You know, that
Mm.
actually means a lot to me. And I think a lot of guys, when they sort of go over 40 into 50, they start to think about that. You know, what is it they're actually leaving behind? What was the point in all of this? You know, I think we become very aware of our mortality. So longevity for me is the length of life, it's the quality of life, it's the independence of life, and the functionality in life as well.
What's your opinion of longevity specialists, maybe like Bryan Johnson?
Bryan Johnson's got a documentary on Netflix, which, funnily enough, I've watched it recently. And so, yeah, he's obviously going. Is he going too far with it? Is he just experimenting? Is he well, I think one thing that is great is that he's putting a lot, I don't know if it's all, but he's putting a lot of his data and findings out there for the public to see. He's, he's experimenting with lots of treatments to, in his mind and in the science behind what he's doing, is suggesting that he can increase his life. And you know what? If there's some stuff here that he can find that is readily available for Joe Blogs, for the rest of society, then absolutely fantastic. Crack on. A lot of the stuff that he's doing isn't accessible to the majority of people. But you know what? Even just by him having that Netflix documentary out, maybe it's just one of those other things that is subliminally messaging us, reminding us actually that we can have some control. All right, we don't have to take 136 tablets a day, like I believe he is. It was close to that number anyway. But what else is there that we can do? You know, can we just move a little more, eat a little better? You know, that's stuff that we're all have the ability to do. So in that respect, I think what he's doing is fantastic.
I agree to a degree. I like his message. I like the idea that we should be thinking about that. And if he promotes that in a way that makes men suddenly have another touch point that thinks maybe I should go see someone, get fitter, or see a doctor and do a health check or whatever, that's great. I would argue from a medical perspective, a case study of one bloke taking a bucket load of tablets where you don't know which one's the active thing that's
Mm.
causing the effect is of effectively no scientific value whatsoever. And you're not going to come out of this and go, oh, published a great paper with a random bloke who took 100 and something tablets and his hair follicle was 10 years younger. And you're like, what do I do with that? You can't do something.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I
it's
mean,
useless.
yeah, you're absolutely right.
If we take it to real life for a second, if you're a bloke 50 and you said, I want to do one thing tomorrow that I can do to start improving or think about my longevity, and it's not going to be 130 things, where would you have them start? What's the easy thing you can start on tomorrow?
I did a video the other day that came out, might have even been this morning on social media, and it just entitled belly fat, right? Because I think a lot of guys, that's probably the thing that stands in front of them.
So maybe top one or two things you would suggest to men to try and reduce their belly fat.
Just number one, move more. Just move more. It's not like you need to go to the gym and start deadlifting the same as Eddie Hall or anything like that. It's just move more. It's like a three-part thing that all kind of comes together. One was move more. Number two was just try and eliminate as much of the shite as possible. You know, as much of the stuff that comes in packets and and the man-made stuff. Just try and do that. Just before I carry on, remember I'm all about being realistic and sustainable, right? So it doesn't mean you need to do this forever. I have a Mars bar every single day. My car is just parked outside those doors, and I can tell you for now, there is a Mars bar in my center console, and there's a Mars bar wrapper in my door pocket, right? So total clarity there, right? Um, so try and reduce or cut down on the shite. And number three, drink significantly more water. Those three things are going to make an incredible difference within the first 5 to 7 days. When you start to feel better about yourself and you start to realize, hey, I just said to myself, I'm gonna do this, and this, and you do that, and that. Well, do you feel like a failure? No. You feel like a success because you said you were going to do something and you saw it through. You did it. And that will just lead into more. And that is probably going to entertain the notion of, I wonder where my nearest gym is. I wonder how much that is. I wonder, can I get there before work? And all of a sudden things start to roll.
I like that. My old boss, the urologist, used to say that you can give a good indicator of how unhealthy someone's belly fat is. If you look down and you can't see your penis, then you know you're too far on that scale, in which case you have an increased risk of heart disease and that you need to do something about it. Make sure it's not a medical reason. So if you've got an underactive thyroid, if you've got low testosterone, any of those are going to affect your metabolism and make you fatter. And you can train really hard, but you can't train your way out of a medical hormone deficiency. So that'd be one thing. And the second thing is, don't rule out medications. So GLP-1s, the new injectable fat loss drugs, are life-changing. It's rare in medicine that you get drugs that are so impactful that they change the way we practice. But in terms of NHS treatment of diabetes and obesity, you give people GLP-1 drugs, and it is changing the way we treat diabetes now. People that were trained in gastric surgery to do bypass and that sort of stuff, they're running out of jobs. They just don't have the same drive anymore because people can inject their way. I'm not suggesting that it's ever going to be a way of not
Doing me out of
exercising.
business,
Exactly. Yeah. You cannot do one without the other. And you can have a skinny guy who's just as likely to have a heart attack as the fat guy. But it's another adjunct way you can try and help your weight loss. And so far, the evidence seems to be very positive with these things. Thinking of longevity then, types of exercise, how important do you feel walking or running is compared with going to the gym, doing weights, HIIT training, whatever else?
Well, if you are a 40, 50, 60-year-old man that's got, I work with guys that have specifically at least 3 stone or more to lose, is running the right thing for you to do. You know this yourself. Every time your foot strikes the floor, anywhere between 3 and even 10 times your body weight is going to go through your ankles, through your knees, through your hips, through your lower back. And then you feel great when you're doing the run. Oh, I'm breathing hard. I've got all these wonderful endorphins going. I'm red in the face. I feel like I'm moving forwards. And then you wake up the following day, you feel awful. And when you feel awful, what do you then go and do? You open the fridge and you eat your own emotions, right? That's what most men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s are going to do. So running, I think again, just like with anything, you got to look at it in context and meet yourself where you're at. If you are someone that already does 12, 15,000 steps a day, going out for probably a 15, 20-minute run once a week is probably not going to cause you many problems. But don't just automatically presume that you can run like you did when you were 13, because newsflash, you can't. Walking, however, I mean, depending on where you live, I mean, if you live on the hard shoulder of the M25, don't go walking, because it's actually probably going to be worse for you than the actual act of walking, right? I'm very lucky. I live right in the middle of nowhere, and my neighbours are sheep and pigs. I'm not talking about my family. That's just things around me. And it's beautiful, and walking, it's got gradients, and I've got fresh air, and it's brilliant. Prior to living there, I used to live right on the beach. Again, fantastic. I've got this lovely fresh air and nature. And what that does for us mentally, psychologically, it's fantastic. So that's absolutely superb. And obviously what that does for our body, it's a function, isn't it, that we're going to really be doing for the rest of our life until we can't do it anymore, right? However, going to the gym and lifting weights gives us that mobility later in life. So, I would be encouraging everybody that is currently able to still be deadlifting in some fashion, squatting in some fashion, bench pressing, overhead pressing, because all of these things are compound movements. They use more than just one muscle group. If we do a bicep curl where it's only really bicep that's working, it's functional, but those other movements are really giving you a big bang for your buck. And I would be encouraging everybody to do that with that walking and other types of cardiovascular exercise as well. If you are a man in your 40s and 50s and your grandkids say, "Oh, granddad, we're going to go swimming. Do you want to come?" You want to have the energy and the ability to say, "Yes, I do." And to create that memory for you and for them, right? So, and I'm going down a bit of an emotional route now,
Mhm.
but that's really important.
Yeah, I agree. From a men's health sort of perspective, we would almost recommend exactly the same thing. So if you want to increase your testosterone, and obviously testosterone is important for a range of things, but particularly like muscle mass and bone density and cognitive health, et cetera, then ideally we'd want you doing higher intensity exercise. Some of the studies say it doesn't matter what, but I'll come back to that later. But for things like heart health and mental health, then actually going out and walking is brilliant. So you're right, doing something of everything is probably the best thing and not limiting yourself to one type of sport. There was a great study, you might know the answer to this already. Could you guess the one exercise that produces the most testosterone that you could do for the least amount of effort?
For the least amount of effort.
Well, sorry, least amount of, I'll put it off, least amount of time.
Oh, it's got to be a deadlift, isn't it?
That's number two.
Squat.
Yeah,
There
it's
you go.
spot on. So squats produce the highest testosterone surge. And it's not an amazing data study, but basically, if you want to get the most metabolic drive out of your train, you do squats.
And the thing is on that, if you think a squat or a deadlift, you don't actually move off the spot. So when you're saying about, the minimum time, you get someone to go and do a 3, 4, 5 rep maximum lift and you measure their heart rate after that, you are breathing out of your ass.
Yeah.
It is incredibly tough. But just on that, and talking about some of the things we've spoken about before, it's about you mentioned about the intensity and that there is some data to suggest or to confirm that the higher intensity stuff is what produces the higher amount of testosterone. Um, we also need to be looking at the safety of this for a man of that age. So when guys come to work with us, they are chomping at the bit. They're so enthusiastic. They're ready to just absolutely tackle life and get a grip of it. And I know that they are going into the gym and they will be going at that at 110%. It's literally like they've just watched Rocky 4 on repeat and they're just like, right, I want to go for it. I know they are. I can see it in their eyes. And we have to actually manipulate their training to bring them back to about 70% on week 1. Week 2, we knock it up to about 80, 85%. Week 3, it's 90, 95%. And then by the time it comes to week 4, now they can go and get a Rocky tattoo because they are going to go for it. So my concern is that when people on social media or when they're listening or watching podcasts, they get drawn so much into the moment. Oh, so and so said this particular piece of information, and they're like, "Well, Alex said it was deadlifts, and Jeff said it was squats. Tomorrow, I'm going to the gym and I'm going to do deadlift and squats.
Yeah, yeah.
I am going to have a hernia on Wednesday." And that's what we just need to make sure that people. And I'm going to say it again. I say it all the time. I say this phrase more than anything else. You've got to meet yourself where you're at. And know that when you do meet yourself where you're at and you progressively work into this, like I just suggested with the percentages per week, that in a month's time, you are going to be taking control over what your testosterone is doing in that given moment in time, because you are going to be training at a almost maximum capacity, certainly at a high intensity.
We'll get back to Alex very soon, but I wanted to ask you something first. So Alex has spoken about obstacles stopping most men from getting and staying fit. And I want you to comment below on any obstacles or challenges that you'll face. We'll be hoping to cover them in upcoming episodes. So back to Alex. So if I had the choice, I'd probably get every bloke who's 40 in the UK and I would check their testosterone and I would do their blood pressure and I'd get their cholesterol done and probably their prostate as well, because then you've got a baseline for everybody as they get older. How would you want to start a guy at 40 training differently to a guy who's 20? I know you've sort of touched on the idea of intensity, but what practically, other than just not training as hard, would you do to a guy who's 40?
Yeah, I mean, it would probably start off with the volume. And, so let's just say, for example, if you're 20 and you're doing 25 sets in your workout, we might actually say that we'll cut that to maybe 15. So the volume of your workout is just a little bit less until we can establish how well you as an individual actually recover. We'd then obviously look at the recovery. So perhaps maybe when you were 20, you were doing a typical bro split, right? So
What's a bro split?
you know what a bro split is. A bro split is You do chest on a Monday.
Yeah.
You do legs on a Tuesday. You do back on a Wednesday. You do,
Oh,
etc. So you're
is that a
giving,
thing?
it's a body part a day. So
Oh,
that is a
yeah, right.
typical kind of
Right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of training program where you would split the body parts up. Um,
And that's okay, right?
yeah,
Okay.
'cause that's what you do,
Yeah,
isn't
that's
it?
exactly
Yeah, I
right.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
For men over 14, for you going in and hitting all of your chest all in on one session, how much are we actually going to recover from that by the time you do it again? We get confused that, oh, I'm feeling a bit sore and a bit stiff as, oh, I've had a good workout. Doesn't always necessarily mean that. So what you'll hear a lot of people talking about now is like a 3-day split where they're talking about doing push, pull, legs. Maybe that's something you've heard of a bit more. So it would be all your pushing muscles on day one, which would be your chest, your shoulders, and probably your triceps. Another day would be your pull. So it'd be all of your back stuff and your biceps. And then you'd have your leg session, and you could probably gather what that involves, right? So you're still getting everything trained in, but you've got a lot more days off. So rest is obviously incredibly important. And there's all sorts of people, nattering on about rest and stuff on podcasts and social media and whatnot. But it really is important for those men over 40, over 50, that they realize that rest is a big deal.
Is there an exercise that you think is really underrated as you get older that we should be doing more of that we don't think
Yeah.
about?
And I'm going to go back to deadlifts and squats. I think a lot of men think they can't do them, and they will give you one of the two following things. One, I've got bad knees. One, I've got bad lower back. There are reasons why you've got that. And you know what? Yes, there may well be mechanical issues, but at the end of the day, if I was to bend over now and untie your shoelaces, which I still might do, what am I doing? I'm doing a deadlift, right? If I was to nip out there to use the toilet, right, what am I doing? I'm squatting to get on the toilet. Not necessarily that everyone's going to be untying your shoelaces for the rest of their life, but we're going to be bending over and picking stuff up. That's a deadlift. We're going to be squatting down to get in a car, get in a chair, get on the loo, get on a sofa. These are squats. So what we don't want to do is to get to the point where we can't do the typical things that our bodies are supposed to do. So there's going to be ways around it. It doesn't mean you have to do the textbook version of a squat. I'm due a total knee replacement on one knee and a partial on the other, right? So for me, to do full range squats, arse to grass, isn't happening. Or if it does happen, it's by accident, and then I'm going to pass out or fall over or whatever, right? So what I'll do instead is I'll do things like cyclist squats, where I'll put a couple of big bumper plates under my heels. It changes the angle that I'm squatting, and I can now squat, to a relatively decent depth. Or I'll do like box squats or bench squats. So I'm literally aiming for a bench behind me with my ass, knowing that I'm safe, that I can touch and go off of the bench. I'm also not doing it heavy. Same with people doing deadlifts. Most people's deadlift form when they start is shocking. They look like a dog in the park doing the business, right? And that, obviously, we don't want to do that. We're going to have all sorts of spinal problems that are going to cause all sorts of problems. So we can do things like block pulls and rack pulls where we're meeting ourselves where we're at, and we're just going to a particular depth of that deadlift that it is safe, it is healthy, and it is keeping that function strong. Then we address things like mobility, flexibility, etc., to be able to get to the point where you can do those a little bit better than you currently are.
So in terms of training generally, what's your opinion for men warming up? What would you want to do as a warm up?
I'm still a fan of getting on something cardiovascular wise that is appropriate to the movements you're going to be doing, right? So let's say, for example, I'm going into the gym and I'm doing, say, an upper body workout. I'm going to do some bench press, some shoulder work, some biceps. Warming up on a bike, probably not the most ideal, because at what point are you even lubricating your shoulders and all the rest of it? You're not. However, if I'm going to do a leg workout, the bike would be sufficient. So if you're doing an upper body workout, I'd go with a rowing machine, I'd go with a cross trainer or the elliptical trainer, whatever you want to call it, because it's using everything. It's using your arms and your legs. I don't think you need to be on there for long. I talk about getting on like a scale of 1 to 10. For fitness people, they'll call it the RPE, the rate of perceived exertion, effectively a scale from 1 to 10. 1, you're still in bed. 10, you're breathing so hard an ambulance has been called, right? You've passed out. I like to get you to about a 5.5, 6. So we know that your heart rate has gradually kind of increased. All of your bursars in your body have started to secrete that synovial fluid out into all your joints, and you're lubed up and you're ready for your workout. Then the warm-up needs to be sort of ultra specific for what you're doing. So I did some bench press yesterday, and I know that if I just go even with that little warm up on the cross trainer, I go straight off that bench press and lay down and just start, going through that motion. My shoulders and my elbows aren't really going to like that very much. And I kind of feel it, right? So what I will do is I'll go and grab the 1.25 kilo weight plates or the smallest dumbbell, and I'll go and do loads of side lat raises, loads of front raises, loads of sort of windmills with my arms, etc., just encouraging lots of blood into that area. I might do 150 of those, right? Just keep moving that particular body part. And there's a moment where you go, that actually feels pretty loose now. That feels pretty good, right? Then I'll start with the bench press. Now, for me, the other day, I think my bench press, I went up to about 120 kilos ish for around about 10 reps or so, something like that. But I wouldn't have gone straight in at that because my muscles are, well, they're not ready for it. If I was to put 120 kilos on there now, something would tear, or be damn close to it, right? So I'll put just the bar on, which a standard 7-foot Olympic bar is 20 kilos, as I'm sure you know, and I would just knock out 20 reps with that. Obviously, again, if someone's watching this, taking this advice, they need to meet themselves where they're at. If they can only currently bench 25 kilos, don't go doing reps with 20 kilo bar, right? And then I'd progressively just keep adding a little bit more weight on. Could just be 5 or 10 kilos at a time, doing a couple more reps. All that's doing is basically getting that wiring system from your brain to your chest and your shoulders, talking to each other, going, right, in a minute, you're going to get it, and it's going to be at this level of intensity. Arguably, if you take that too far, you're taking some of the energy away from the working set. But you got to look at, who you are and what you're trying to achieve. I would personally rather not make that extra 5 kilos on the lift, but actually have put my shoulders and chest in a position where they're not going to get injured.
So in my clinic, we tend to see men largely with low testosterone as their primary reason for coming. They don't always know they've got low testosterone. Quite a lot of the time, they've been to their doctor. They've been told they've got a low testosterone level because they're feeling tired, because they're struggling at the gym, they're fatter or they're tired. They just haven't got that oomph anymore. They may get referred to an endocrinologist who says to them, well, all you need to do is lose weight and get fitter, and the problem will solve itself. The problem is that when you have low testosterone, you don't have the motivation to go to the gym and do that. So you're in this vicious cycle that means you're never going to achieve. So they get very unhappy and it promotes a cycle of poor doctor satisfaction. From your side, do you think you can see that type of person? I'm not necessarily saying, can you diagnose a low testosterone patient by what they look like in the gym, but can you see a difference in them between those that are able to drive through and those that are just sitting there going, I really don't want to be here. I don't want to be part of this, and how that affects outcome?
We get a lot of guys talking to us saying, hey, I think I've got low testosterone. And for me, I'm no GP, I'm no expert in that area. However, whether or not I'd use the word expert or not, but when you've worked with the amount of people that I've worked with over the years that say that, there begins to become some trends that become flipping obvious. When someone's in their 20s and 30s, they probably have a lot of accountability, right? They're working their way up in their career and they've got someone breathing down their neck. Have you done this? Have you done that? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Maybe even mum is there going, come on, darling, it's time for you to get up and go to work, right? There's accountability there everywhere. For you to get to where you're in your career right now, you've obviously had support, you've had supervision, you've had trainings, inductions, and all this kind of stuff, right? So you've been able to get yourself to this particular point. Now you're 40, now you're 50. You're now at a point in your career. Do you have accountability now? Probably not, because you're probably a lot higher up that tree where you're trusted with whatever it is that you're doing in your profession. So you don't have the accountability, you don't have as much support. We can't rely on the motivation. We have to have a structure, we have to have a routine, a system, a process, things that are guaranteed to move things forwards for you. And what I've found with the thousands of guys that we have every year is that they don't have the accountability, they don't have the support, they don't have the structure, the routine, they don't have the guesswork taken away, and they're left in no man's land where the first thing that they can say is, oh, my mood is low, my motivation is low, it must be this. And there's people that then go and get tested and then find out. I mean, even recently, some of my guys have come to you and have found out that actually they do have low testosterone. And fantastic. Now we can put the two things together and watch them just develop now. Their personal growth is going to be immense moving forwards. But I think for a lot of guys, some people find it difficult to reach out and get that medical help. men in their 40s and 50s, they have a trait of being flipping stubborn,
Yeah.
and they don't think that they don't want to get this label of going, oh God, I've got low testosterone. That means I'm a girl. You know, it means I'm less of a man. These are the emotional things that these guys are probably going to think. And I think listening to stuff like this podcast is actually going to make them realize, no, you're not. It's actually a real thing. You've given the numbers 1% a year. Down we go. Of course, you're going to feel like shit when you're in your 40s and 50s. But if you're not going to reach out and get those tests done to eradicate or to confirm, what else is it you can do? And that's going to be to address those things I just mentioned: accountability, support, guesswork, etc.
What do you think is the one biggest obstacle that guys face in looking after their health better?
Just being utterly confused, right? I've been doing this a long time, right? And I still now find myself doing the toilet doom scroll on TikTok or on Facebook or whatever, because we all do it, and coming off of it going, oh, is that true? Oh, is that not? And literally I could be, looking for 10 minutes and see probably 15 different health and fitness videos. All of them are talking different things. So I think that's probably the biggest obstacle, is this utter confusion. I don't know what to do. Certainly when guys approach us, they are so confused. And the reason they've got in touch with me is because I'm pretty direct. I'm saying the same thing. It's relatable. So other posts that we do are very popular is I start the video off saying, notice that I'm having a workout right now with my shirt on, right? And I don't have a wax chest and a Colgate smile. No disrespect to the majority of the fitness industry, but the majority of the fitness industry are probably lower than 25. They're probably between 18 and 25 years old. How relatable is that to a 45, 50-year-old man?
Mm.
That 25-year-old, with the greatest of respect, I'm sure they've got qualifications coming out of every orifice, right? But they do not know what it's like to wake up in the morning and have these aches that you just can't, walking off down the corridor, sounding like the percussion section of a Phil Collins tribute act. Do you know what I mean? Where everything's clicking and clacking and stuff as you're going down, right? I don't get it. So my advice would be, follow people on social media, watch stuff like this that is ruthlessly direct and totally relatable to you.
Yeah.
I think then the obstacles disappear because you're getting one source of information and there's no confusion.
I completely agree. There's we obviously men's mental health is a big thing, and there was a drive in the last couple of years to reduce suicide in men, improve mental health awareness, etc. And there was a great documentary on, I think it was BBC or one of the other channels, that had a rock star's son who was a DJ talking about his concerns with mental health and his friend who had taken his own life. And this was really good because it was talking about mental health for men. And of course, the peak incidence for suicide in men is their mid 40s. And we know that men in their 40s don't talk about their mental health much. And how much can you, as a guy who maybe has a dead end job, who doesn't enjoy his marriage anymore, who feels stuck, relate to a rock star's kid DJ talking about his struggles with mental health? And you're like, this I can't relate to this scenario. So we haven't made big improvements in mental health for men for exactly these sort of reasons, because we don't have relatable characters. I mean, that said, there are a couple coming through. I think there's a few from rugby that are really good that have started to make a big indent on that. But generally, a bit like sport and fitness, you need relatable targets that mean something to you. Do you think there's like I was gonna say Alan Partridge sort of aha moment that guys come in and go, that's the thing that means I can go look after my health now? Do they come to that with you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was only chatting to one of your guys before this about short form content, right? So these kind of 30, 60, 90-second reels. And I think that people will consume a lot of these, and then there's that one sentence that you just go, yes, that is it. And people get that aha moment. So yeah, that I think a lot of people, they have, again, what I call it in a book, I don't know if I told you I write a book, is I call it the fuck it moment, right? And I think everybody has got the moment where they go, right, that is it. I'm making a change. And do you know what? I bring this up, and this wasn't prepared. A guy 2 days ago, can't just joined us. He's in Australia. He's a professor of business, and moved over to Australia about 15, 20 years ago. And I said to him, I was like, look, most guys, they have this kind of aha moment, or I would call it a fucking moment. That's the levels of professionalism to this, right? And he said that, he goes, yeah, I can tell exactly what it was. And I was thinking he was going to give me that cliche. I got halfway up the stairs and, noticed I was sweating profusely, or my daughter had her first child and, that was the moment for me, or I was just diagnosed as being pre-diabetic or something like that. No, he said that he loves fishing and he's got a little boat, and he was explaining to me, the size of the boat and all the rest of it. And he said he brought it into dock, and when he stood up, he couldn't control his body weight. He said he's very, very front heavy. The boat started to go all Karate Kid on him. You remember that bit, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he fell in the water. And he came out of the water, had lost his glasses. You could just imagine this guy with long beard, white hair. It wasn't Father Christmas before I know what was coming. And he got out and he was like, you could just imagine him just feeling really down in the dumps. And he was like, that's it. He then came back home, obviously dried himself off and whatnot. And he'd been watching my stuff for about 8 months. And it was that moment that he then thought, do you know what? Actually, there is this guy that I need to go and talk to. And yeah, he's on his second day in and he's lost 8 stone since. He hasn't really. But, so yeah, the aha moment, the fuck it moment happens for everybody. And it's always something incredibly unique for that person. For me, it was, I got diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. And at the time I was 25 stone and I was doing relatively well in my little world in strongman. And I was like, oh no, not everyone makes it out of a kidney transplant operation. And then the reality is, I remember sitting in the doctor's surgery, in the car park, sorry, outside the doctor's, when I'd come out with this diagnosis and this particular GFR percentage rate, right? And the first thing I noticed was I had this little dangling Donald Duck, right? I think Donald Duck's hilarious, right? He only wears a top half. It's funny, isn't it? He's got nothing on the bottom. Weird. Anyway, and I remember buying that the first time I took my daughter to Disneyland. That just clicked me, and I was a mess in the car, bawling my eyes out, thinking, right, Alex, you have got to change your lifestyle. Yes, I was fit. Yes, I was strong, but I was not healthy. The lifestyle that I was living, eating an immense amount of calories a day, as a strong man does, had led me, along with other things, had led me to be where I was health-wise. And that was my fucking moment. And I remember driving home and I was like, that's it. Retired from that. 14 and a half months later, I'm 10 and a half stone down. And
10 and a half stone down?
Yeah.
Because you strike me as slightly over 10 stone now.
I am slightly over 10 stone now, yeah.
How heavy were you?
I was 25 stones. I was 154 kilos. Yeah.
That's pretty stacked.
And bear in mind, I'm 5'10" and a bit. So I'm not, I'm not 6.5 foot. So yeah, I lost a lot of weight. A lot of that was obviously still quite reactive. And obviously it wasn't totally realistic and sustainable, which is obviously my motto. But what is realistic is that I got down to that weight. I took a massive control over my life. My knees don't hurt when I'm going upstairs now. I don't cry on step 12 now anymore. They still need doing. My kidneys are, they've found themselves a base layer now. So the transplant is on the cards, but it's not happening right now. And yeah, all right, some of that weight went back on again, but I'm not, 154 kilos anymore. I'm about 100, so I'm taking control because of my fucking moment, my aha moment. And I think when people can establish that and start working towards a better version, the rest is
How old were you when this happened?
what was I, 30, 59, 40?
Okay.
Roughly. Can't remember exactly, but yeah, about that.
So do you think there's ever a point for a guy where it's too late
No.
to say?
No, not at all. You're just one decision away. There's something I say all the time. You're like this. You can start. Let me just frame this first. I'm not a fan of diets, right? Diets as a rule will come back and bite you in the ass. They won't work. But this phrase, I think, is a very powerful thing to say. You can start a diet halfway through a packet of crisps. At any moment, you can go, I'm not that person anymore. And you can make a change. So no, I don't think there's ever too late. I think if your mind says, if the doctor says to you, oh, Mr. Beevis, yes, you're 60 stone now and you have 6 weeks to live, your mind can say, well, game over then. But your mind can also say, well, can I make those 6 weeks 8 weeks? Can I make those 8 weeks 12 weeks from making some changes? There's always that person that can confront the circumstances in front of them and change it. We see people go from rags to riches, and we see people go from ill health to good health. it's your own life. You can take control. It's just who you've got around you to help steer your ship to the right destination.
So it's never too late.
No, it's never.
Anyone
too
can
late.
get on board.
I
I've
think
just got to
so.
do it.
Why wouldn't you?
Last thing from me. If there was one thing you could tell a guy, 40 plus, I don't care, 40 to 100, who was thinking about doing something to improve his health, what would you say to him?
What's the biggest challenge? What's your biggest struggle right now? Why is it that you're not? I think that would be it, because I could give you some kind of Nike advert and be like, just do it, and stuff like this. But too many low level comments like that are out there that have no real kind of
Context?
substance.
No
to it.
answer?
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, what is standing in the way? What is your biggest challenge? What are your hurdles? What are your obstacles? Get them out of your head, put them onto a piece of paper with a pen and look at it. Because when you can get it out of your head and you can see it, it's you can justify whether it's a real thing or not, and what is a matter of urgency and what isn't. And then I think from there you can establish a plan and you can just kind of sail off into the sunset holding hands after that.
Yeah, ours is the same. And I think the answer would always be is what is personal, what means something to you. And the range of reasons we get patients coming to clinic is either if they've had an aha moment, something has happened to them that meant something. So to ask a generic question, what is the thing? The answer is always, well, what's personal? I think I said this at the beginning, but I think our influences on men are not that dissimilar. The way we go about it is the same, but the overall goal for blokes is the same stuff. It's getting you healthier to live longer and happier, and that's all that. So coming to that, then I understand you have a book that has recently been released.
A couple of years of my life have been poured into this. It's called Realistic and Sustainable, a guide to permanent weight loss. Basically, I've been doing this a very long time, and I've seen so many people yo-yo physical health and really importantly mental health. 1 minute you feel great because you've done a diet, you've lost loads of weight, and then the next minute, you feel great, so you go on holiday and you abuse the all-inclusive bar, and you come back and you've gained the weight. Christmas happens, all of this kind of stuff. Basically, we go up and down in weight with the seasons, and it affects our mental health, and that then affects everything else. And this book is it's not going to give you the perfect workout. It's not going to tell you the perfect diet, but it's going to tell you how to unlock what it is you need to have present to make it the last time you ever lose weight.
So if somebody wants to follow you on social media or come find your business, where do they go?
You just got to type my name in. My name is spelled Beevis. But all you got to do is go on to, we're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube. I have a podcast on Spotify called The Real Podcast. And we might even be asking for the odd guest to come and have a workout with me. And
that'd be great.
I'll leave that one dangling there. So
I might need less time to warm up, but we can go for it. No, it's great. Thank you. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Man Alive. I'm sure you had a mate, a colleague, or a family member you thought of at least once while watching this, and maybe they would benefit from Alex's advice. Share this episode with just one person and let's grow together. And see you next time.